Hi, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Cyber Exchange's Innovator Spotlight. I'm Armstead Whitney, the CEO of Aptega, and I'm really excited to be able to bring another great, remarkable person and a remarkable company in the cybersecurity and compliance industry, BARR Advisory. And I'd like to welcome Brad Thies to the line, and he is a principal at BARR Advisory. And so, Brad, welcome to today's session.
Thank you, Armstead. It's a pleasure being here. Appreciate you having me.
Well, you guys are really unique in that you do a lot of different things in the security and compliance area, from services to some attestation on the audit side. So a full suite of services. So I look forward to digging in. And so I think just to kind of kick us off, just for those that are new to you, just tell us a little bit about BARR Advisory and who you guys are.
Yeah, thank you. And we, like you mentioned, we do work in cybersecurity. There is the compliance aspect of it as well, but it starts with the mission. And our mission is to build a more secure world, both from a compliance and security perspective. And we can touch on what security and compliance means in a minute. But how we do that is we focus mostly on our niche type clients with whether it's cloud service providers or startups that are typically 100% in the cloud, or if not close to, in very common SaaS type companies. And we help them by really two main buckets of services. One is on the attestation side. So we are a CPA firm. We don't like to tell many people that from our street cred standpoint, but we do the SOC reports, ISO certifications, high trust, really you name it, any framework. We can help provide that assurance. But then on the flip side, which is a little bit unique from a lot of other firms out there, is we also have a consulting or CISO advisory, Chief Information Security Officer advisory practice as well. And that helps us with that perspective of not only knowing how to do the audits and compliance stuff, but actually rolling up our sleeves and doing the work ourselves and building these programs out. And that's more on the CISO management of cybersecurity.
That's great. I think with the emergence of COVID is pushing a lot of things to the cloud. A lot more apps and a lot more data is being shared in the cloud. And so security is even more critical if you have less control of your data. So I think you guys are in a growth industry.
Yep.
Well, I guess as you start working with your customers, what are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing when they try to implement great security? You mentioned you work with startups, so I'm imagining these organizations don't have large IT or maybe not even any security expertise. So what's sort of your approach when you meet companies like that really almost have nothing in place?
Yeah, usually and this is a challenge in the industry in itself, is that you don't really sometimes think about information security until your customer asks you. And so you might have some interested stakeholders, and usually you're in the business of serving your client. And so because we work with startups, a lot of times they're really building these programs as they are building their product as well. And they are trying to close a deal, and they get these customer questionnaires, and the questionnaire has a litany of compliance requirements. And that's really the challenge is, okay, which ones do we really focus on? Because if you focus on everything, then you really focus on nothing. And so I think that's the number one challenge, at least from our perspective with our clients, is where do we even begin? When you say security, what does that actually mean? And if you're trying to close a deal, what is the right approach to information security? And typically, it starts with ownership. Who's going to own that within your company? Because I think the common mistake that a lot of clients make when they're thinking about security is that you can just outsource it. And yes, we could be a partner in that, but the ownership has to reside within the company. You can't outsource it really like anything. You can delegate everything but accountability, and the accountability has to reside within the company. And that's where we can really come in and help. And what we've seen challenges is just really helping to navigate that first and foremost piece of ownership. And then from there, it makes it a lot easier that we can get into things like, okay, what framework do you want to start with? Because you got to, like I said, start with one. It's too big of a task when resources are finite to think you can boil the ocean with every single possible framework imaginable, because we look at compliance as just the baseline. Sometimes it can be more distracting than really add to real security. And so pick one, start with that good baseline. over time, those things can map into place, and so you can speak that common language with your clients. But that's the number two challenge, is picking that framework. And then the third, I think, is just figuring out what that governing structure is going to be within your company. There's a lot of technical things that can be done around cybersecurity and compliance, but you want to build that first foundation of governance and ownership with what's your ethos, if you will, when it comes to information security within the company.
Absolutely. And, a lot of those vendor questionnaires, I'm sure, are driving a lot of that business, because, we all get them, and you've got to have great security to be able to kind of pass those and then build on that. Like you said, you may build something first just because of the questionnaire, but then you want to build great security controls around that. So that's a great approach to do. A lot of people think compliance equals security, but it sounds like you don't really buy into that.
No, no, not at all. And I think it's been tossed around a lot about,
yeah,
security does not equal compliance. I do think security could equal compliance. The issue is that compliance it's there for a reason. It's there for a baseline. It comes with things that happen, right? And it's, whether it's a regulation or whether it's a standard, trying to find that common language. I always tell our clients, when it comes to these different frameworks and compliance programs, what it comes down to is speaking the same language as your customers. There's only one way to speak that language sometimes, is to find that commonality. If you're doing work with international clients, maybe it's ISO. If you're doing work locally here in the States, it might be SOC 2. If you're in the healthcare industry, it might be HIPAA high trust. It doesn't really matter what you choose, but you have to start with one. And that's where I mentioned the mappings can help. Again, speak the language, because they all come from different angles, different scopes, different perspectives, different data that you're trying to protect. And so it's important not to just assume security does not equal compliance, because I think it does. It's just more of translating that into the language that makes sense to your customers.
Absolutely. It sounds like you are working with companies that just don't have big IT teams or security teams. And so they may be approaching security and compliance for the first time. And it takes a unique approach to be able to do that well and kind of start them on that journey. Are you guys focusing on CMMC at all? That's a big framework that's sort of coming out, and a lot of companies are asking about that.
Yeah, that's derived from a lot of the programs with the Department of Defense, and we worked a lot with NIST 171, which is really the framework that CMMC approaches. And so right now it's just provisional in terms of the attestation standpoint, but we are working with some clients right now, just helping them to get ready with it. Either us as the auditor hat, or on the other side of just helping them build some of those programs. But again, it goes back to the same types of basic blocking and tackling of all of these frameworks. Start with ownership, and who owns the controls, who owns the program. And that's where, to your point about smaller IT shops, first figure out where that ownership really resides. And that's where you might have to augment that supplemental help with outside expertise. But think of it as a long game. It's a roadmap as you're scaling and growing as a client, or sorry, as a company. Don't think of it as that you're always in perpetuity going to need an outside CISO, virtual CISO, as a lot of times, or fractional CISO, as sometimes it's called. Don't assume it's always going to be virtual or a fractional CISO, because what we tell clients all the time is, we will be with you as you continue to scale. There's going to be that point where you've got to just hire somebody full time inside the company, and that doesn't mean the roles change at all. You still have to have all the same traditional roles within your company of ownership of cybersecurity, but as time goes on, that ownership then becomes a full-time job, and that's when you got to hire on that additional help. And that's where we'll grow with our clients, and a lot of times it starts small, and you got to define those roles, and then, just like anything else, those roles might change quarterly and how you define them and who owns them, until at some point you hire that full-time CISO within the company, and then they'll work to outsource some of those program requirements that have been built over time.
That's great. Yeah, I always like to ask my expert guests about sort of the threat landscape, because it does change. there's a lot of threat actors that are now going to smaller companies, SMBs, because maybe the sort of feeling is the larger enterprises are maybe a little bit better protected. But can you share, just kind of being out in the market, what are some of the threats you're seeing kind of the most today and your clients are kind of concerned about?
Yeah, and I think keep in mind from our perspective, since we are working so much with cloud service providers and small to medium sized businesses, yes, we do end up growing with them to public type companies, late stage, early stage public companies. But because there's such a dependency on the ecosystem of cloud products and third parties and APIs, just communication with various systems. What we see from the threat standpoint is who owns what. We talked so much about ownership before, and there's this shared responsibility. And so, from our perspective, it's the threat of third party. It's not just third party risk. It's an awareness of where those holes might be, and making sure you don't just assume somebody else owns that. And so it's having that accountability still within your organization. So the threat from our perspective is just knowing where that attack surface resides. And that's where is the inventory of how your system works, what you've opened up to the outside world, which is necessary today, and how you've worked in some of those kind of soft GUI attack surfaces of APIs and other things for attackers to compromise. So to sum that up, it's really just an awareness of the attack surface on not just within your company, but also how that's grown outside. And don't always just assume that AWS has it covered, or GCP has it covered, or Azure has it covered. And then on top of that, of course, the unpatched environment. And so I don't think people take vulnerabilities sometimes seriously enough, where you're just running scans, but it's really about what's your program around triaging those types of things, and unpatched environments are usually the reason things get hacked. That and credential theft.
All really good things for every company to be aware of, for sure. Well, I'd love to dig a little deeper into BARR's sort of services offerings. So it's okay with you, I will let you grab the screen, and why don't you share some aspects of your services?
So we already talked about who is BARR Advisory. I think real quick before we get into the services, it starts with our core values. And so the services that we're providing today might change and evolve over time, and it starts with unparalleled support. The second one, from a transparency perspective, that is what cybersecurity is all about. Unfortunately, usually the repercussions of a breach, or even an exception that you might find in a compliance program, they need to be more transparent. There needs to be information sharing within the industry to really tackle these large scale problems, because it's kind of like us against the world. Right. And so we're really working towards transparency. Not only just, yes, we're a firm that produces reports for the public, but really making people feel comfortable to be transparent with their clients and with their customers, so that we're not trying to hide issues. Inclusive, that goes with just making sure that we've got a full spectrum of ideas to solve these challenging problems. Simplicity, there's a lot of jargon out there, and cybersecurity doesn't have to be that complicated. And so we really want to make sure that we're providing something and our clients are providing something that's really has simplicity around it, so it's not confusing for understanding what the issue is. And then future ready. We hope that we're not always a services company. There's got to be some automation, some compliance automation, security automation. That's where some of our partnerships come into play, of just being able to address some of these programs in the future standpoint. But I already talked about our mission. From an empowerment standpoint, we really want to empower our clients to be able to run things self-sufficiently. We don't want our clients to be dependent upon us, and so that's why empowerment really comes into play to help them teach a person how to fish, right? And as they continue to grow, sometimes they just need the fish right now, but we will eventually teach them how to fish so they can solve their own problems. So in short, from the types of services that we do offer, that you mentioned. The blue is really the more assessment type services that are at that attestation that I mentioned. And most of our business really comes in from the SOC examinations. That's usually a good baseline reporting framework, and it's a reporting framework. I think that's the common misunderstanding with SOC is that it's a report. It's not
Right.
just a bunch of
Program.
criteria.
Yeah.
All of these other frameworks, it's about speaking the language, whether it's health, HIPAA, ISO, the government assessments, CMMC. You can wrap a lot of this stuff in your SOC report if you like, and SOC 2 plus, and we do SOC 1s as well, and SOC for cybersecurity and SOC 3. But we really typically lead with the SOC report, given that it's so flexible in reporting out your posture, no matter what framework you want to speak the language to your customers. Healthcare compliance, we do work with a lot of clients in regulated industries, and if you have high sensitive data to protect, usually it's going to be in the healthcare industry. And so we've started to see an uptick in high trust certifications as well. There's debate about there on and some of the value add with the very prescriptiveness of high trust, but it is here, and it is a requirement for on a lot of contracts, and so we're there to help our clients get there. Certification to ISO, there's several international, even domestic. There's some talks about with everything going on with GDPR, some other ISO certifications that might be floating out there to actually certify against some of the privacy programs. And so the foundation is the 27000 series that we work on. While we're not a FedRAMP 3PAO, we do assessments with some of the derivatives of FedRAMP, whether it's DFARS or CMMC, and then the NIST framework and NIST CSF framework as well. PCI compliance, and then we also have a penetration testing arm. And then all of this is said, like I said, we want to have that perspective, and so that's why we also offer that virtual CISO services. So we feel like the virtual CISO services keep us sharp on the attestation side, so we're not just running through check the box auditors, but then on the attestation side keeps us really in tune with what the market's demanding when it comes to compliance when we're offering our virtual CISO services.
Do you guys price, is it like on a monthly sort of program fee per project? What's sort of just your pricing model in general?
Yeah, so we do have pricing models generally for our attest, and we have a different pricing model for our virtual CISO services. It's fixed fee,
okay,
value based on the attestation side, and we offer different types of pricing tiers based off if you have a compliance automation solution. We part from that standpoint, so we do offer a different tier with that. If it takes us less time, we're not going to gouge you for it. But if you don't have a solution, then it's a different tier. And then it also depends upon complexity. And that's stuff that we can price pretty easily up front in about a 30-minute session. It's fixed pricing, no surprise fees. On the virtual CISO services, there's really three types of pricing models that we do. First, we start with an initial gap assessment just to figure out what's the lay of the land, what should the roadmap be. That's fixed fee. And then from there, there's really two other components. Sometimes it's project based, like, hey, I just need some help navigating all of these auditors that are coming at me. I just need some help managing that. And that's usually project based, or I need help implementing a SOC program or a SIM solution, those types of things. Well, that's just a fixed project base. And then but the more popular one is just having us as more of a subscription model where we charge a monthly based fee, and it's a bucket of hours. And we're here to help some. It goes anywhere from 5 to whatever is needed, but that's the whole point of a fractional type virtual CISO. You don't need a full time. Sometimes you just need some guidance and help and consultation to kind of push things in the right direction. And a lot of times a 30-minute call goes a long way, just knowing that you have a resource to call upon when there's these litany of issues that come up. So those are our three pricing models on the virtual CISO side.
Sounds like you're flexible and you're able to sort of tailor, the services to the types of programs that your customers are looking for.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I love the overview, and we're going to just I'm going to grab the screen and we're going to switch over and take a look at BARR in the Cyber Exchange portal. So I'm just going to share real quick my screen back. And we're going to head over to Cyber Exchange, take a quick look. All right. So Cyber Exchange is, an e-commerce marketplace where BARR Advisory has some listings. And so you can, I'm going to screen this right here. Great. And so what we did is there's a provider drop down. So you can find BARR Advisory, right in the drop down. And you can see that they offer, to kind of recap what Brad said, here's a list of kind of all their services, from assessments, pen testing, audit work, right? SOC 2, ISO, PCI, you see all the areas they do the audit work in. And so it's very simple. Come in here. Let's say you're interested in, a virtual CISO opportunity. You can come in, you can learn more about sort of their engagement process. They have a 4-phased approach on kind of how they engage you, which is great to see here. You also have, kind of a deeper dive overview, kind of a 2-pager to kind of learn more about the services. And you can come in here and you can get quote, you can learn more. You can also, if you have the ability, you can save this opportunity to your kind of shopping cart. But really quick way to get in touch with Brad and his team, to learn a lot more about his services. Let's say you're interested in more kind of on the audit attestation side. He mentioned that he does SOC 2, for example. So I can just click that listing. And again, they've done a great job in sort of their approach, being able to kind of lay that out for you so you can really kind of see what the steps are when you engage BARR Advisory. And again, just one click away, click get quote or learn more, and they'll be right back in touch with you and take great care of you. So this was a great session. Brad, I really enjoyed learning more about BARR and your background and perspectives. And I'll pull you back up on the screen so we can see each other to say goodbye. But really appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining the Cyber Exchange Innovator Spotlight.
It's been a pleasure, Armstead. Thank you for having me.
All right, and to our audience, we look forward to seeing you at the next Cyber Exchange Innovator Spotlight. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for joining.